So now that we installed Laravel, the next thing we need to talk about is where exactly certain files might be located inside our project. Because right now you have a bunch of folders and it seems a little bit messy for a person that might see it for the first time. So we need to talk a bit about where can you find things. We do have a little bit of a setup as well that we need to include, because right now, if I were to actually try and run this test server inside my browser, it is going to open up my htdocs folder, at least inside my dashboard. And we don't want that to happen. We actually wanted to open the specific website that we have open right now inside the editor. So we do need to change a couple of things inside our code. I think the first thing I want to show when it comes to a Laravel project is actually something that you should be doing inside a non-Laravel project as well. Because you may notice something specific in the last episode. Because when we wanted to see our website, we had to go inside a public folder. And inside this folder, we have a index.php file. And the reason we had to go inside a public folder is actually for a very specific reason. Because you might be thinking, why isn't the index file just inside the root directory? You know, just where all the other stuff is. So right now, if I were to go inside my website, inside my local host, you can see that we can see all these different folders that we have inside our project. If I go inside my public file, we actually see our website. And the reason that we want to have everything inside a public folder, at least the stuff that we can see inside the browser, is because when you actually upload this website to a server, the URL for your website is going to be firstwebsite.com. And you can go inside other pages inside your website by saying /contact.php or /aboutme.php. But you can go inside other pages, right? One thing you cannot do is you cannot go back a directory. So the furthest back you can go is firstwebsite.com, but you cannot go one step back. And that is actually a very important thing, because that means that if I go back inside my project here, that I cannot go out and access all these files outside the public folder. So the only thing the user has access to when they open your website inside a browser are the files inside the public folder. They cannot go back a directory and access any of these files here, which is configuration files, model controllers, views, all these sort of things that we don't want them to have access to. So this is something you should be doing in order to prevent the user from going out inside these files here. And this is why we have a public folder. And this is why we have to go inside the dashboard and we have to dig into the public folder to see the website inside the browser. It is for that particular reason. Now, another thing I want to mention here is that if we were to scroll down inside our files, you're going to find a .env file. This is our environment file that has all sorts of environment variables. If I were to go in here, you can actually see that we have a app URL set to localhost. At least if you're using a default installation of Laravel, this might be localhost. But right now, if I were to actually open this inside the browser, it is not going to open my website. It is going to open my dashboard folder inside XAMPP. In the next tutorial, we're going to go in and actually start developing our website and learn how to include CSS and JavaScript, so we can actually start doing things like with HTML and things like that. But the way we do that is by actually running a developer environment, which is a temporary environment that we can develop in. And then later on, we can say, okay, you know what? This looks good. Now I'm going to compile everything and build a version for my website, which is actually the website that we have inside our project and not just a developer version. And if we don't change the app URL here, you're actually going to develop inside the wrong environment. So we need to make sure that this app URL matches with the link that we have our website inside. Again, this is a little bit confusing to listen to because we're not actually creating a developer environment right now, so I can show you. But I just wanted to point out that we do need to change this app URL here. So what we need to change it to is actually localhost /dashboard/ and then the name of your website, which is first website /public, because we also do need to add that in there. So now it's actually pointing directly inside our public folder, which is where we have our index file. Okay, so now it will actually open the proper page when we start developing using the developer server. Again, this is not really something we're going to do in this video here, but I just wanted you to do this so you're ready for the next video. Okay. So with that done, I just want to point out that inside this file, you can find many different configurations, such as if you have a database set up, which we do, because otherwise you wouldn't be at this point. where you can choose what kind of database connection is it, what is the port that you're using, what is the name of your database. So if you changed it inside your database, you can change it here. What is the database username, the database password? You can change things in here, which is what I just kind of wanted to point out. But let's go ahead and talk a bit about where your front page is when it comes to your website. Because right now, if you go inside the public folder, we do have an index page, but if we take a look at this, like this is clearly not what we're seeing if I actually refresh my website here. Like this is clearly not what is inside our index page, because our index page looks a little bit different. Like it's using different classes and libraries and, you know, like what is this stuff? Like that's not what we're seeing, right? And this is actually not what you're seeing inside the browser. What you're actually seeing is if I were to go down inside all my files here, we have a folder called resources. And inside our resources, you're going to see we have CSS, JavaScript, and views. And the views folder is going to have all the different pages for your website. So the front page, if you create a contact page at some point, like that's going to go in here. So all the different pages you have created for your website is going to go inside the views folder. So the welcome.blade.php file you see here is actually what we're seeing inside the browser. So all of this stuff here is what you're seeing when you go in here and see this. And again, this is placeholder. This is not really something that's going to be part of your website. This is just kind of a, oh, you installed a new Laravel project. Here is some tutorials on how to get started and blah, blah, blah. But we're not going to use this. So we're just going to go ahead and go back inside our project. And instead, let's actually go and create a new front page together. So if I go ahead and right click on my views folder over here on the side, I can say new file. And I'm going to say we want to create a home.blade.php. And now you may be asking, what is .blade? Like that's not something you've seen before. This is actually a template that Laravel uses to allow for you to create different snippets and shortcuts inside your code when you PHP code. So the Blade template is something that just simply allows for you to create different shortcuts and make things a little bit easier for yourself. And we will talk more about Blade at some point in the future. For now, just know that in order to use Blade templates inside your files, you need to include .blade inside the name of the file. It doesn't make any difference. You can still just create regular PHP if you wanted to, but it also allows for us to create Blade shortcuts, okay? So what I can do inside this file, as you can see, it's completely empty. We can actually close the terminal for now, is I can just go ahead and create a regular front page. So we just create some basic HTML. I can go inside my body page here and I can create a h1 tag if I wanted to and say, let's call this one home. And with this, we now have just a basic front page that has a little bit of text in it. But if I were to go inside my website, you're going to see, well, we still have the same website. So how do we change the front page? Well, that is actually something that we have to do manually. Because when it comes to a Laravel project, we actually manually tell our website what page needs to be shown if I type something specific inside the URL. So we will get more into what routes are in a later episode, but just to briefly show it to you, if I go below my resources folder, you're going to see that we have a routes folder. Inside this folder, we have a web.php. If I open this one, you can see that we have a small snippet of code, like a small statement in here that says, oh, if the URL looks like this, then return this particular page, which is the one called welcome. Right now, you can see that inside our resources, inside our views, we have a welcome.blade. So in order to change the front page, I can just change this one to home, save it, go back inside my website, refresh it, and then you can see, oh, now we get a new website called home, because that is what we wrote inside our front page. So again, we need to talk a bit more about what routes are and, you know, like how to create new pages inside of Laravel projects, things like that. And again, the basic thing I just wanted you to know about this is that whenever we create a new page inside our Laravel projects, it goes inside the views folder. So right now we have a home page, we have a welcome.blade. If we wanted to create a contact page, I'm just going to create a new file, call that one contact.blade.php. So now I have a contact page and I can start creating HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all that stuff. So again, a little bit different than what you're used to, because usually we just create a contact.php file and just link to contact.php. And that's not how Laravel does it. We do actually manually need to go inside this file here called web.php and say, oh, you know what? If I want to create a contact page, I'm just going to create a new route. I'm going to say that if I have a URL that is called contact, then I want my contact page to be shown. And now if I type /contact inside the URL, it is going to show my contact page, which is the one we just created, which has nothing inside of it. But if I were to go inside my URL here, contact, then now I have my contact page shown inside my website. So again, just to kind of show how pages work inside your project, because this is something that we will get a little bit more into at some point in a couple of videos from now. We will do one thing for now, which is just to kind of delete the welcome.blade file because we don't actually need it. Now we have a home.blade.php we can use for our website. So we're just going to go ahead and right click the welcome.blade and say we want to delete and move to recycle bin and save it. And just like that, we now just have our own pages inside our website. We have our own front page and we have a contact page. And that's pretty much, what we might want to start out with. Now, the next thing I want to talk a bit about is where we put our CSS and JavaScript files inside our project, because you may already notice that inside our resources folder next to our views folder, we do also have a CSS and a JavaScript folder. And this is actually where we need to put our CSS and JavaScript. Now, when you do that, let's say I go inside my CSS folder, you can see we have a app.css. This is actually the main CSS file for your entire website. So CSS that is shared across all the different pages go inside this one. You can also create a separate CSS file. So if you wanted one, let's say one specific for your index page, then you can create a new file, say index.css or home.css, and that will be for that particular page. But in this case here, if I were to go inside my app.css, you can see we don't have anything. So if I were to say that I want to customize a h1 tag, and say I want to open up the curly brackets and say I want to create a new font size. Let's make this one really big. So let's make it 200 pixels. If I were to do this and go inside and refresh my website, as you can see right now I'm inside the home page. If I refresh, nothing really happens. And this is actually because we need to talk about something that you have probably never done before, which is the fact that when you create a Laravel website, you're going to have two versions of your website. You're going to have a testing version and you're going to have a live version. Now inside the public folder where we have the index page, the one that I showed you a little while ago, this is actually the live version of your website. But you're going to notice we don't actually have any CSS or JavaScript inside this folder. And this is actually where your CSS and JavaScript needs to be in order for you to see the changes inside the website. So why do we not put it in here? Why do we put it inside a resources folder? And that is because we have a testing version and we have a live version of your website, okay? And the reason we separate these and actually have a testing version is so that we can test out things inside the website, we can start developing on the website, and until we're actually ready to publish what we have, we can actually just kind of develop our website inside a testing server. So separating the live version from a testing server allows for us to do different things like separating different concerns, testing things out before we put things live. We can see things live inside the browser, so it updates as we're writing things. Like there's a lot of different things there that are beneficial for separating these two. But the CSS and JavaScript we put inside the resources folder is for the testing version of our site. So because the version that I'm seeing inside the browser right now is the live version, the updates and the changes has not happened to this version until I actually create a build for the live version, which is a copy of my testing server. And yes, this is a very different way to do things than just creating a website folder and just creating an index.php file and just running that and just changing things inside that file before you actually do things. Like, it is a different thing and I'm aware of it. So some people may find this a little bit overwhelming that, oh, we have a testing server and we have a live server. What is going on there? But that is actually how we do things. Again, in the next video, we're actually going to set up the testing server and I will show you how to create a live build that will then actually take these files like the CSS and JavaScript and the views down here and actually compile it so we have a build inside the public folder that has the CSS and JavaScript inside of it so we can actually see it inside our website. So for now, just kind of be aware that we have two versions of our website. We have a testing version and we have a live version, okay? And the last thing I want to show you here when it comes to the project setup is the MVC model, because as you know from the first tutorial, is that we do use the MVC model system inside a Laravel project. So the MVC model, if you follow up my crash course in Object-Oriented PHP, is the model view controller. This is basically just a way for us to separate PHP code into different tasks. So we have one file that handles queuing the database and handling data back and forth between the database, because that is something very sensitive. So only one particular PHP script should be able to handle that. So we don't have other PHP files doing sensitive stuff when they don't need to. So we basically separate the database stuff into the models. And then we have the views, which are responsible for showing stuff inside the website, which again makes sense because it's views. So we're viewing stuff inside the website. And then the last one is controllers, which handles interacting with the user. So whenever the user goes inside a website and fills out a form and submits it, then the controller is going to be the middleman that takes care of all the data that the user passes to us inside the website and gives it to the models so they can queue the database, because that's what the models do. And then the models queue the database, maybe they bring some data back again. The controllers then grab that data, puts it inside the views so we can show the data inside the website. So that's how the MVC model works. And this is a concept that is a little bit confusing for a lot of people who's never done it before. But that's how it works. And I just want to show you exactly where we're going to put those different files inside our project. So the first one I want to show you is the models, which go inside app. And then we go inside the models folder. And in here, we're going to have all the different models from inside our website. So right now we do already have one file, which is called user.php. And that's because inside our database, you may have noticed that when we did the migrations in the last episode, we did actually create a user table, because by default, Laravel has a authentication system where we can create users and sign up users inside the website. So by default, it will have a user model, which is going to take care of signing up users and locking them in and stuff like that. So this is what the users table do, but we can also create our own. So if I want to create an article system inside my website where a person can go in and create articles inside our website, then I could go in and right click and create a article.php, which is going to take care of all the different article data from inside the database. Then the views we did actually talk about already, which is going to be inside our resources down here. And then we have a views folder. And this is where we're going to put all the views for our website. So showing stuff inside the website. And in this case here, we have the home and we have the contact page, because that's what we created ourselves. And this is basically just showing data inside the database, showing these different pages. And the last one we have is the one called controller, which again handles taking care of the actual interaction with the user. So they do things inside our website, maybe queue the database for logging into the website or something. That one we can find inside app, just like with the models. And then inside our HTTP folder, we also have a controllers folder, which has all the controllers inside of it. Now, for some reason, it combines the folders here. So it's HTTP/controllers, but it is a controllers folder inside the HTTP folder here. And you can also see we do have a default one that doesn't really have anything inside of it currently. But this is where we're going to put all our different controllers. So again, just a little bit of information about the MVC model and where we put those inside our project, as well as talking a bit about where's our front page at? How do we create new pages inside our website? What is a test server? There's some things we need to talk about there, but just know that we will do things one step at a time. So, while it is a little bit overwhelming right now because there's a lot of information, it is something that just takes a little bit of practice, and then immediately you're going to start rewiring your brain to start, thinking in this sort of way with test servers and live servers and where to put files inside a project like this, to actually organize things a little bit. So hopefully this all makes sense to you. It is, of course, really difficult when I'm just sitting here talking about what a test server is and I don't actually show it. So I think if people are confused watching this video, it is because you don't actually get to see some practical examples and you're not actually sitting there doing things yourself, just kind of listening to me talk, which can be a little bit confusing, but just know it's very normal to be confused at this point if you've never done stuff like this before, okay? So don't feel like you're stupid or anything if you don't fully understand what I'm saying, right? Because we will get to do some examples and then things are going to start clicking. So with that said, this is how our project is built up. And that is all I want to show in this video. In the next one, I will talk a bit about how to actually start developing on your website using CSS and JavaScript files and how to run a test server so you can actually start testing your website and creating a build you can see inside your website, because something like that is important to do here at the beginning so we can actually start creating things and, just get into the habit of doing things the correct way. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you guys next time.